Yeah, New York in the 70s, 80s. That was my era. Well, that's what drew me to Cuba. The moment I landed in Havana, it felt like New York in the 80s. The whole energy was the same. That's why I kept going back and started shooting.
Welcome back to the Street Photography Magazine podcast. It's me, Bob Patterson. I am the founder of Street Photography Magazine. I guess you could call me publisher emeritus because our actual publisher's on with us, Ashley Riffo, who's been getting her feet wet for several months. She's now an expert in many areas.
I think you declare me an expert much too soon on many fronts, Bob.
Nah, I've been working with you for a long time. I know, you're an expert in a lot of things. So anyway, we've got a guest with us today, John Rosenmiller. Very interesting guy. One hell of a photographer, I want to say that. And we're going to talk about just about what he's been up to, his life, his work that he's doing in Cuba or has been doing in Cuba, which I personally find inspiring. So we'll get into it. John, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
So I guess I didn't even really introduce you properly. John is he's done many things.
John is an expert on many
things. He's an expert in a lot of things, or maybe a master of none. I'm not sure, but yeah, he's done photography for quite a while. He used to be in the feature film business, stock market. You said
I had a interesting but relatively straightforward life, working in feature films first, in locations and production. Then I worked in corporate financing at a radio station. Then I built houses and bought and renovated them. Then I got involved in the stock market. I kept saying to myself, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then I hit 40 and I realized I like a whole range of things and I do them as best I can. And then when something happens, I move on to something else. I mean, I would say within the last year, I feel accomplished enough to call myself a photographer. Several years ago, I sat on a plane with a guy who was going to shoot for Doctors Without Borders. And he said, "Are you a working photographer?" And I looked at him and I said, "That's a very good question. No, I am not a working photographer. But I'm trying to shoot the best I can."
That's an interesting question. I guess you mean by that earning a living in photography?
Earning a living and having enough talent and skill to say you're a photographer. I shot pictures for 8 years. And most of them were horrible. It took me 3 years to realize how bad I was. And that was when I started to get better. And it's only really clicked a lot for me in the last couple of years. Now, I don't come from a background in art, in design, in composition, in anything. So I was, learning as I went and looking at books and working with people. And I like that. Can I do that? And I'm a slow learner. So, what I thought was good in the beginning, I look at now and I'm like, thank God to those people who are nice to me. But I do think you owe in all seriousness, I think you owe your craft the obligation of, if you're going to claim you are someone doing that you need to have what you believe is a certain level of skill and accomplishment. And that's your decision. But that's how I look at it. So
I would call you a working photographer just because you're not making.
I was a working shooter before.
Yeah. Okay.
I was, because you have a camera doesn't make you a photographer, because your phone doesn't make you a photographer. And it gives respect to the people who are doing it and have achieved something. And I think that's, I got old school values. That's important to me.
Yeah.
But, so anyway, my film background was really helpful, even though it was in production, which after you've done about 6 years in that, if you don't want to move to LA and be a producer and you're living in New York,
Yeah.
you go crazy, which I didn't want to do. But I learned a lot about locations and finding places and solving problems. And in Cuba, as I imagine in a lot of other places, but in Cuba, that skill has been very, very helpful for me. So, it's a good training.
I know you've said you've done photography for a while, but I am curious how you got started with that.
Well, as a kid, I shot. Like I mentioned, I had the last camera I think I remember having was Olympus, and I had a little darkroom in the basement, and kind of shot in high school a little bit, in college, and then I pretty much gave it up. I wasn't that good or inspired, and I'm 66. When I was 54, 3, my dad passed away, and I'd spent a decent amount of time just hanging out with him, and I realized that there was sort of this gap of time, and I'd reached a point in my life where I had done a lot of things, but I realized I'd never done anything creative, anything solely creative, and I had no idea if I had any talent. I honestly didn't, and I hadn't taken any art classes, things. So I thought, it coincided with a trip that my college, Hampshire College, which is now closing, had to Cuba for alumni, and they had a program there. And so I went there in 2013 in January and landed in Havana, and immediately felt this sense of connection and kinship, because Havana then and still is like New York was in the 80s, 90s. It's chaotic. There's raw energy. There's characters. There's just this whole movement of humanity going on. And it's overwhelming and wonderful and scary and different and all these things that the New York I grew up in that I liked. That's what Havana was. It took me 2 years to understand that was what drew me there. But I decided to go back and shoot street photography. And I kind of knew the only way to do it is just to get close enough that you're uncomfortable and don't sit there behind a cappuccino with a 200 millimeter lens.
No.
And
Cappuccino's okay.
if you can find it,
Yeah.
you get
Cuban coffee. What are you talking about? Well, I guess
you get
Their
a
coffee's
cortado,
amazing.
not a cappuccino. But
Yeah.
so I got a little old Canon, and I went back and I started walking around the streets shooting. And I slowly connected with some people there, developed a kind of network of people, and go 4 or 5 times a year for a week to 2.5 weeks. And I've probably gone 25 times.
Wow.
And the only other times I've shot outside of there was I shot in New York the first 2 months of COVID when nobody else went out. I was out every day. And I did a short film about that. And then when it got warm and everyone came out, I was like, you know what? The good photographers are coming out now. I'm packing it in. So it's a situational thing for me, but it's also become this sort of driving force. And, my goal when I started was to have one person who I didn't know say to me, hey, I really like that photo. And if I got that, everything else was gravy. And that has allowed me to not feel a sense of pressure, and to appreciate what I go through.
So did you speak Spanish before you went?
Do I speak Spanish now?
I don't know.
Poquito, el baño, Sanicero, mantequilla.
Ashley's going to give you a test.
Well, don't even bother. No, I don't.
Oh, really?
No, so I've connected with Cubanos who speak English, but I also I'm really good on the street in New York. I mean, I can go up and talk to anybody in the street.
Uh-huh.
And I find that um, people, when people respond to me, it's because there's a certain sense that I don't hide things. Like I'm not there like, hey, I'm one of you. I'm trying to live your life. I am who
Yeah.
I am, and I am curious in you, and I am interested. And you seem like somebody who I'd like to photograph. Is that okay with you? And sometimes you ask, sometimes you don't, but I don't get negative responses a lot, I think, because I don't try to present myself as anything different. That said, I'm not always going up and, I'll point to the camera, está bien, whatever, look like a
Huh?
stupid Yuma, but, I get used to that. I'm a New Yorker. I don't care.
That's
You
a
got to
good
use
way
what
to
you
put
got.
it.
Oh, yeah. They're like, these guys are like, Yuma. Yuma's, Yuma. You know what Yuma is? Yuma
I
is the
read that in
Cuban.
your article. I never knew that before.
Yeah. There's no gringo there. There's no, references to, Americans or white Americans. Everybody who is not from Cuba is a Yuma, somebody from Britain or somebody from Spain or whatever. Yuma, and it comes from the film The 3:10 to Yuma, which was really popular in Cuba. But what's interesting is, and this is classic Cuban, nobody knows why they chose that term, but they all know where it came from. Yes.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Cuba is a lot of, okay. You got to get used to that. You just got to get used to that. And, it's taken me a long time to understand the culture, and I'm only 20% there. It's not my world. It's not what I grew up in. But I've learned more in life than I have in photography, I would say.
Wow.
Well, so you started going there primarily just to do street photography?
Yeah, I
And
didn't
then,
have any objectives except to see if I could create something creatively from my head and only my head.
yeah.
My business skills, not my education, well, whatever, but just could I create something that has some merit to it? There's something valuable about it. And I thought I'd rather be able to do that before I die than not. So why not do that now in life?
So at what point did you start the project, the Carboneros of Cuba?
Started shooting in 2014-ish.
Oh,
Um, so Roberto Garcia, who is a close friend of mine now, who worked for this program my college had, and so he was the first person I connected with, and he was sort of their, man on the ground in Cuba. He set all the logistics up. I keep telling him he's as Yuma as a Cuban can be. He's organized and has it together, and So we were in Trinidad, and we had heard about a photographer, um, Iram, and we met him, and we were going through his photography, and he shot endless photographs of underwater sea coral and things that were so boring to me because I only shoot people. I don't care about anything
yeah.
but people.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, there's a shot of this guy Incenzio standing on a dirt pile, and I'm like, "What's that?" And he's like, "Oh, that's a Carbonero." I'm like, "Well, what's a Carbonero?" He's like, "Oh, they make charcoal out in the woods." And I'm like, "You know him?" He's like, "Yeah, he lives in Calaban. It's a town outside. Let's go shoot him." Okay. So we grab a few flashlights and this and that, and we found out he was shooting somewhere along the road, and we're driving up and down the road, and it's 9 at night, and we're leaning out, and we're acting stupid and going, Carbonero. We see a little smoke pile, and Senzio and Mario are over there with this small pile, and we shot them and hung out and went to visit them the next day at their little village, and then it's a little world, and that's the thing I learned from film is you always take one place and you leapfrog to another. Other people who do this, where else it's done, Can you introduce me to the next guy? And that's how you keep going forward. So that was the first one. And I kind of got hooked. I started shooting the rodeo, following the national rodeo around, shooting them. I started shooting boxing, kind of a sports thing.
Yeah.
We're shooting in these homes for the aged that we were able to get access to. Some of it was what interested me, and some of it's what I could get to, you know.
Well, you've your portraits that you've been making of the Carboneros are, I think, pretty amazing.
Thank you.
And well, I like about your website is you don't put a lot of stuff on there. And what you have is really strong. I mean, so many people just like plaster everything on a website, and there's like hundreds of photos. But you're very discerning about what you're publishing, and these portraits are just I don't know, they're so personal. There's just a lot of emotion in them, and it just like real. I mean, it doesn't look like anybody's you know playing to the camera, and that has to come from you.
It comes from me, and it comes from them.
Yeah.
And the situation. You're dealing with people here who are, these are campesinos. These are people out in the country. I mean, some of these people don't have cell phones. A lot of them don't. They're going around horse and buggy, and they're old school. They're older, so they're not used to cameras. They're not used to this. They think we're crazy coming out there and photographing them, but they like it. It's different. It's new. Why not? These are all shot against just a simple piece of black, like, 8-foot wide fabric we carry around. We hang it between two trees, take a flashlight, side light them. And that's it. But
I'm gonna tell my husband that next time he wants to buy some expensive softbox.
Yeah. Get a flashlight.
All you need is a flashlight. Come on now.
I'll tell you something.
Open John's website and show it to him. He's going to save you a lot of money.
I don't have any interest in this company, but Nebo makes very good flashlights. And so part of it.
Send me the link. If they're cheaper than a softbox, I will buy him that.
Oh, there's that. Yeah, there was a little bit where we tried a softbox, but it was like sometimes you're at the end of the night. It's 12 o'clock. Everybody's tired. You got 5 people you want to shoot, and you just don't want to mess with stuff. So somebody stands there and they kind of go like this, they diffuse it like that, and you wing it, and it's like that works. Stop. Okay.
Yeah. For those listening, John's waving his fingers over the front of a pretend flashlight. So
if you want to learn this particular technique, you'll have to watch the YouTube video.
Yeah. So is Roberto normally your voice activated light stand?
Sometimes when he's not angry at me.
Oh, okay. But I mean, when I first looked at him, I'm going, wow, how did he light that?
Yeah. No, it's it's simple. Some of these people, what's really interesting is, you're seeing the good portraits.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, but the same woman, the woman with the cigar or the guy with the hoe who's just like, okay, they have a face that's built to reveal itself.
Yeah.
You have to see that face and you have to say, you're it. Now, the guy next to him, whose eyes are a little bloodshot, he's been drinking a little bit too much, he's this, he's that, he's boring as all whatever.
Yeah.
Terrible photo. But the same expression, no expression. And most of these people have no expression. There's a couple of them, Chino and his brother, who were like Hollywood. They're like, Chino, yes. I mean, they're used to being photographed, but most of these people, they're just standing there like, well, what do you want me to do? But there is an honesty to that, in a sense. There is, it's there's nothing over them.
No
So it's not like I didn't bring out any deep dark moment or thing in them. It's not like Avedon or somebody, but you got to look for that in the face and the eyes. And I always look for that in people. It's so much in the eyes.
Yeah.
And when you find somebody, and then it's a question of, do I have the right composition? Do I have the right setup? Do I,
So I know, like you're saying you're self-taught and it's taken you a long time to get where you're at. How did you learn to shoot at night? Like, what's the key to, like, these photos are amazing and it's pitch black outside. Like, how do you do that?
Well,
How'd you learn that?
I knew I needed some kind of light.
Yeah.
If I didn't have light, those would be boring photos.
Yeah.
So when Uram is an accomplished photographer in a different field, and technically he was pretty good. So we said, hey, let's go out. And I think he had a light or two, and we had some flashlights. And, you get out there and you realize, like, hey, if I backlight behind this pile here with all the smoke coming up, that looks cool. All the smoke's wafting, this and that. And I can't see his face. So, let's get a light over here, just side light on the face a little bit. And, you make it a little bit too wide so you get him in there and a little bit around. And, I'm sure my exposures for a long time were way off, but with digital, you got a lot of forgiving room. I've been shooting with a Sony and A7R4 now for a while, and you get 6, 7 f-stops there. And so it's just trial and error. And I'm sure there are lighting setups that I haven't done because I get enamored with what I have that I probably should expand into.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It's I don't know. I hope everybody looks at your work. Matter of fact, just go do it.
Yeah.
We're going to have the link in the in the show notes, and because it's not different, but it's just, I don't know, it's just strong.
It makes an impact when you look at it.
It does. It really does. I mean,
well, thank you.
I mean, I haven't forgotten them, and they look a lot of work.
It is, but it's fun work. I mean, it's 8 hours, 9 hours, whatever, but it's worth it. I want to address one thing you said before, which was about people who, they post 10 photos, this and that. So I always have a theory that if I show you 10 good photos, you're going to say, hey, you're a pretty good photographer. If I show you 40, 10 are good and 30 are okay, you're going to say, you're an okay photographer who's got some good shots.
Yeah.
You don't know the crap that's in my boxes. Okay. So, and that, I think, I don't know why more people don't realize that, but I think people get, enamored with their work. And I don't know if this phrase is acceptable anymore, but the idea of you got to be willing to throw out your babies. You may have thought, oh my God, this shot, I did this, I did that. I'm so in love with this shot, but it's not good. It's not your best shot. You got to walk away. And
it's funny that you say that. I was at a photography festival over the weekend, and there was a woman who spoke, Jenna Mulhall Breton, and she has done a 15-year project, and it's of religious festivals in Mexico. And over the 15 years, she has 50 prints. That's it, of all these years that she has selected to be a part of this project. So I asked her, like, how do you self-curate? How do you cull your photos down to, 50 photos in 15 years, that's cutting it way back. So, and she said, if she has a photo that is an almost, it's a no. And if she has to say to herself, well, this photo's good because this and this happened when I took it, that's a no.
The moment you say,
and I was like, that's such good advice.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. And I'll come out of a week or two of work with one or two that I go, oh yeah. And it doesn't mean the other ones aren't good enough to show or make a print of or this, that, but when you're really culling it down, it's hard. it's hard. You have to, there's what I read somewhere, and I always use it, the 5-second rule. If you don't look at my photo for 5 seconds, I lose.
Yeah.
You got to be compelling. You got to grab somebody. I don't care how you do it. If you don't grab somebody and they don't look at your work and go, oh my God, and they don't study it, then it's an okay photo.
And it's not going to stick because we see 5 million photos every day. Exactly. So it's, it'll just be gone.
So I'm always trying to ask myself, is this compelling? And then I'll show it to people and I'll watch their reaction and I'll see. It's hard for me to be self-critical, self-editing. I rely a lot on someday this photo I like, someday that photo. It's 6 months after a shoot before I've settled down on what I really like. I don't think I have a natural self-editing talent. So
it's hard.
It is.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that anybody has that that talent. Even people who have learned to edit struggle with it. You know the story behind a photo, and then it means something to you personally.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to distance yourself enough to say, it only means that to me.
No, it's true.
Yeah, you made a good point earlier when you were talking about, you show only 5 photos. And you're a great photographer, you show 40. Yeah, he's got some good ones. And I was listening to a podcast the other day. I think it was Kevin Mullins, who was primarily a wedding photographer for many years. He's on the Fuji cast. And you probably listened to the Sony cast, I guess. But but he said the same thing. He said, he learned from dealing with brides and their families that you have 3 really good ones of a similar scene, only show them one. Don't show them the 3. Don't even let them know they exist. So only show them the really good one. Right. For the same thing that you said.
Yeah.
That's great advice, though. Like from our side of the perspective, we get submissions all the time. And sometimes photographers will lose out because they send us so many photos.
Yeah.
That it's too much. And you think that, oh, well, they're okay. They've got a couple good ones in here. But if you can cull it down to your 6 most powerful photos or, and send that, and it makes such a different impact. Yeah. And makes your work come across totally different.
I think it's a combination sometimes of this belief that, well, one of my photos will grab them,
Mm-hmm.
So let me just give them a lot. And then some of it is ego. Some of it is people just think, oh, I got a lot of really good stuff. And I've never struggled. I've never had a problem in my life in whatever I've done with criticism, however harsh it may be, as long as I felt like somebody was being honest and not just saying it to hurt me, but for a reason.
Yeah.
If somebody says, that photo's terrible, and this is why, that helps me.
Yes.
I don't, I'll say thank you and let's go have a coffee,
Yeah.
It's not personal. And I do that when I go to critiques. I'm like, just tell me what, rip it apart. Be honest. What can I get better at?
So have you ever shown your work to Bruce Gilden?
No, I haven't. I know Bruce, but I
do you? Okay.
I don't know.
I figured you might. Yeah. I just had a thing happen today. I've mentioned this way too many times, but I've been shooting a lot of jazz musicians in our area, and I just happened to have at a meeting at a bar where they were playing jazz, and had my camera with me, and I got some of my favorite shots of a long time, and I did include I took one of a woman with their friend, and they were talking to another woman. 3 of them. One of them had kind of a funny look on her face, but I really liked the photo. I liked the composition and their gestures, and I included them in a gallery. because we got a festival coming up, and they're going to use some of these to promote it. And one of the women in the photo says, "You have to get rid of that one because it's not very flattering." This rarely happens with men, by the way, but it's not very flattering, meaning especially me, although I think she looked good. But so what do? It's a strong photo, and it might even make it in my book, but she's upset because it's not flattering. Do you keep that or just do what she wants?
It's interesting to me, in the general sense of what are your parameters as a photographer?
Yeah.
What is your set of rules and values and morals that you live by? Which is not legally what can I do or things like that.
Yeah, sure.
And my approach is I don't ever want to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
I don't want to take a photo that will cause pain. And I had one situation in Cuba where I saw this funeral for a 6-year-old, and it would have been great. And I knew intuitively it was the wrong thing to shoot.
Yeah.
And I filed that under the best photos that I have, which are photos I've seen and never shot because I was too lazy, because I didn't want to do this, because I couldn't do it right, whatever. I have a whole library of great photos that I didn't take. And I just said,
where do you keep that?
Up here.
Yeah, okay.
Periodically, actually, with guys and people I'm shooting with, I'll be like, remember that shot? Remember when that guy walked by us with the monkey in his hat and this and that? We were eating and we didn't want to get out. That was a great shot. They're like, yeah, we should have shot that, whatever. But that, I just said, I'm going to experience this moment and all the pain and all the emotion as a human being, but I don't have to participate because I will hurt people.
Yeah.
But I also have walked into, beauty parlors in Cuba where women, 80-year-old woman on a Sunday was getting her hair done and her curlers and all this. And I knew I had about a minute and a half before they booted me because they actually told me, okay, it was okay to shoot there. And I knew once they realized what I was doing, they were going to kick me out. I walked right up to her, boom, 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 boom. And the woman was cutting her hair. I was like, no. And I was like, she's going to be fine. Her life is not going to be harmed by this.
Yeah.
That's my own way of looking at it. Other people have other things. People will say, did you get permission? Did you get this? I don't go up and sign things or necessarily directly ask, but if someone doesn't want me to shoot, believe me, I'll know it.
Yeah.
And unless it's, sometimes I'll respond and not do it. And sometimes I'll be like, you know what? I'm going to take the shot anyway. Sorry.
Yeah. You sure don't want to wind up in a Cuban prison.
No, you don't. And that's why you don't shoot the military. And that's why you know what you don't shoot. But people in curlers and beauty parlors are unlikely to get you in a dark hole.
That's good.
You might end up in one of those 50s style hair dryers, but they still use. But so yeah, it's everybody has, you develop your own creed, so to speak.
Yeah. So John, you talked about earlier having learned a lot from scouting locations for films. So what did you learn from that? What did you learn doing that helps you doing photography today?
So I worked in film and kind of cut my teeth in the early 80s, in the height of the independent film movement in New York, of Spike Lee and Jim Jarmusch and Abel Ferrar and people like that. And so we did not have a lot of studio shooting, but we had a lot of indies and names that have, become known. And part of that was run and gun, learning how to get stuff done on the fly. You're going into 145th Street with such and such, and you're shooting on a street full of rubble, and you got 200 people watching, and now the camera's shifting. And how do you get 200 people to go from here to there without creating a whole thing? I'm a New Yorker. I'm like, hey guys, help me out. Help me out. We can all see this. We can all move over here. We can do this. Anybody know where I could put an actor to put them so on? So my point being, you learn to move on the street, and you learn to find, how will this person or this situation take me to the next one? So when I started shooting boxing clubs, I started shooting these small boxing clubs in the outside communities outside of Havana, where these 5-year-old, 6-year-old kids come. And it's still a big thing there. Boxing's a big deal. And I would always be like, talk to the professor, talk to the trainer. You know other clubs, you know other people. Go into neighborhoods, see where kids are hanging out. Yo, Nino, where's the boxing club? Talk to a big guy, he'll know. You parlay from one to another to build contacts. And that helped a lot. And then I just was reading everything Cuban and going online, and I would read about a community in the mountains who practiced a water religion. I'd be like, they're cool. How can we find them? Let's figure out how to find them. Maybe they're interesting. So part of it is following curiosity. And I think for me, one of my biggest skills is I've always been curious about people, particularly people whose lives have nothing to do with me. So when I was 18, I was hitching cross country and talking to guys who jumped on the box cars when they were younger, and, up in the mountains with these miners who, towns were being shut down because the smelts were closing and all this stuff. And I just was fascinated by their lives. And I think that's a genuine thing. So people don't see me as, who was it that said it? Helen Levitt or somebody said, they're the photographers that swoop in for the photo and take it and then leave. And they're the people that hang out there, wait for things to unfold, like Helen Levitt did. And to me, it's been it's an ongoing sense of experiences that even if I don't get a good photo, it's been a great trip. I've met people. I know Senzio. I know his kids. I know these weird people. I'm sitting at 2 a.m. in Trinidad in the middle of the woods with, 5 guys. And I'm like, I'm a New Yorker. What am I doing here?
Making carbon, making
and
carbon.
I'm like, so much happier here than I would be at a club or a bar or this or that. This is fine by me. I've done that stuff. I don't need it. So that's just led me, to this. What drives these kids? How do they see their lives getting out of these neighborhoods? What is it? If you're the Nino in the block who's the big boxer, you get respect, you get this, you get that. I'm doing a project now in women boxing, and they've only allowed, for 2 years, they've only allowed women boxing in Cuba because Cuban women are too pretty and beautiful to box, was always the line. And I've been shooting these 2 academies where the top boxers go, and they're a long way from the Olympics because they're just starting. But these women are serious. I mean, they could flatten me in a one punch, any one of them. And they're really driven and they work. And you hang with them for a while. They don't know why you're there. They don't know who you are. They can't figure you out, but they accept you. And, they then get to realize, hey, this guy's okay. I don't know what his game is. And I don't show a lot of photos. If I show them photos, they will post them on Instagram, and then they will get seen. And then the government agency that runs boxing will say, what's that guy doing over there? We didn't give him permission because I'm a licensed photographer. So I got to stay under the radar. I'm an old guy. I'm in Cuba. I like the sports. I like the food. Oh, this is just a camera I have, and that's how I get by.
Smart.
Just.
Is that part of the reason why you've really only shown on your website the Carboneros?
It's a reason I have not gone on social media for a long time. And this was really the first time. And I was a bit reluctant even when, I was offered a show by Fototeca. Fototeca is the national photo gallery in Cuba, the top gallery. And it was an amazing honor to me just that they offered me this. And in leaving the meeting, the woman said, as Cubans say a lot, well, the show's yours unless the building falls down. A month later, she calls me up and says, or emails me and says, they're closing our building for renovations. Now, in Cuba, that could be, a year and you'll reopen. It could be a year and the building is so nice, the government's taking it for something else and you go somewhere. Or it could be, we don't know when it's finished. And so she said, look, I can connect you with Fabrica de Arte, which is this big nightclub that has galleries and stuff. And she did. And, that was, where I was worried that if I showed my stuff that publicly, and I'm a foreigner, Cubans can show this stuff. But if you're a foreigner, it's a different thing. They don't want you to show the bad things. It's not illegal.
Yeah.
But it's not what they want. And I could just as easily show up at the airport one day and they're like, sorry, no visa, get out of here. And that's the end. So it's not worth it for me. But I was convinced by enough people that it was not controversial at all. So I agreed to do it. And I was a little nervous, but nothing so far. So
have you been to Foosterlandia?
Yeah.
Fooster?
Oh, yeah.
Jose Fooster, have you met him?
Last time I was there was with my cousin, when my cousins came, maybe 7 years ago. Yeah. And Hamul Alley. And I mean, there's some cool places in Cuba, that's very different than here. And the wall art, not graffiti, but murals are amazing. And we don't have that in our culture here. We have a graffiti culture that can be artistic, but they've got murals that are just, and street murals, and characters. And, there's 2 + 2 = 5, who's all over Cuba, and all these different, it's like Tacky 184 used to be way back in the early days in New York. And so Foosterlandia is a nice place. Yeah.
Yeah. We were there. We were only there for a day. We had a private guide. And she goes, I'm going to take you to see this guy. She knew him. So, we looked at the place and then she dragged me around. Okay, there he is. She told him all about me, about the magazine and, and he's posing for me and stuff. And what I found interesting about him is he had this keychain and he had a big Toyota logo hanging from it. He had a brand new Toyota truck, and they can't get cars there, but he's a big shot artist.
Somebody in the government likes him.
Yeah, they like him, and he got to buy a.
Yeah, you don't get the Toyota
Tacoma.
You don't get the Toyota truck if they don't like you.
Yeah.
But
so all the work I've seen of yours is monochrome. Do you do primarily monochrome?
I shot color till maybe 2.5 years ago. Saw people's work that were black and white, and I just felt like, there's 2 sides to Cuba. There's the classic, colorful Caribbean, pop your yellows and reds and make everything look bright. And then there's the 1950s noir kind of feel, the old look. And I was struggling with color. I didn't have a great ability to edit or grasp. There's some editors and some people who are just so phenomenal that their colors, and, mine looked like, all my crayons mushed together. And so it simplified it. And I liked that. And I started shooting a lot more shadows and light and things that work well. It trains your eye a little differently. So I will get some shots that I know are color. And if and when I do a book, there'll be 10 photos in there that are color. But by and large, I'm doing just, black and white.
Yeah. I personally think you made a good choice, but
thank you.
That's just my personal opinion. I like monochrome too. So as for travel to Cuba, I was there in 2018. It's like November 2018. And it was right after well, not right after. It was in the middle of what's his name's presidency, and when he shut it down.
It was
You
Trump's
couldn't.
first term. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
I used my press credentials, because it's complicated how you can go there, and I forget the terminology now, but I was able to go as a journalist.
Right.
But then when it got shut down, it was very difficult to go. But you go all the time. How
How do I
how
do
do
it?
how do you do it?
Well, that the illusion that most people believe is Cuba is hard to go to. Cuba got shut down. The reality is that since 2004, 5, somewhere in the Bush period, one of those Bushes,
Yeah.
that flights to Cuba, first there were a bunch of charters from Miami, then the JetBlues and so on and Delta started going. You could book a plane ticket in 2 days, get a visa, go there.
Mm-hmm.
Cuban government will issue you a visa because they want your money.
Yeah.
You don't need to be somebody. If you're a foreigner, you got money, more than they got, more than the people there have. Now, the American government has a very interesting thing through the State Department that's called a self-filling visa. And you go on to a certain State Department page, you pull up this form, and this form says, here are 30 boxes.
Yeah.
All of them are legitimate reasons to go to Cuba. Check a box, make a copy, bring it with you. They may ask you for it on your way back to the U.S. There is a box that says aid to the Cuban people.
Yes.
Aid to the Cuban people is, I got some Band-Aids and razor blades. I got some food. I got some of this. You're aiding the Cuban people. That's all you need. I have never once in 25 times been asked to show that visa on the way back. Most of the time I'm in a flight. There's a lot of people coming from Cuba. So they're used to people coming in at that moment. Hey, John, what are you doing there? Oh, I was just visiting friends, this and that. Okay. Bring anything back? No. Okay. Welcome home, John. Thanks, guys. See you later. That's it. Never had problems. But Trump banned flights to different parts of Cuba.
Oh.
And so you used to fly to Holguin or Santiago. Now it's only Havana. But Trump, so he wants to hurt him. So they spread the word that you can't go to Cuba. You can. It's never got changed. And here's the thing. There's so many Cubanos in Miami who have relatives there.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the interesting things that is a little hard for us to perceive in this country is, families in this country will get divided by politics and they won't talk to each other and they'll get really angry. You've got Cubanos who have left there, moved to Miami, absolutely hate the government, or, just would love nothing more than to go over there and kill Castro and take over and this, that. And then you've got their families living there, supporting that government, so on. But they're family. Mm-hmm. And they may have diametric positions, but God damn it, Hector's helping Mariella with some food. He's sending stuff over. He cares about the kids. Family is strongest. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of places, not in the United States, by and large. So if you shut down the flights from Miami, you shut down the ability of all these people in Miami to have their relatives have a better life than everybody else has there. The irony is, of course, it's these Cubanos who are helping create a miserable life for everybody else, but they're taking care of family. And you do that, you lose their vote. Republicans don't want to lose their vote. So they won't shut the flights down from Miami. Just as like they won't invade, because if you invade or you absolutely overthrow that government, who's coming over the ocean to Miami and Florida? How many boats rafts and this are we going to see? They don't want that. It's a weird situation. It's not Venezuela. You have this closeness and then this incredible, hatred at the same time.
Mhm.
And that's one of those things that took a long time to wrap my head around. But I kind of get it now, you know? Family's family. Family is the thickest thing in Cuba. I have family I'd like to give them. But that's an American perspective, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Anything else you've learned from the Cuban people that has kind of shaped you or changed you?
I've learned to appreciate life. I've learned much more. I've learned it's amazing to me the amount of people who've accepted me, welcomed me, let me into their lives with no real reason, been incredibly nice and generous in a really I mean, sometimes I cry when I think about it because I say to them, you come to my neighborhood, I introduce you to my friends, they'll have lunch with you. They'll say, nice to meet you. Thank you. Have a good time. They will not treat you like you treat me. They will not accept you that way.
Mm.
And, you know, it's the Carboneros letting me in their world. Why do you let me in your world? You know, I mean, and not just in a like, you know, hey, okay, give me $1 for a photo, but really just opening up and especially with the language barrier, which is, you know, my fault because I'm too lazy to learn Spanish. But, you know, it's a sense of um there are people who, when you do not have a lot, 98% of Cuba is in the same economic situation. So there's such a lack of inequality. Everybody's poor. Everybody cares about each other. You don't have gang wars. You don't have neighborhoods. You don't have drug dealings. You don't have all the social ills. It's safer. Havana's safer than Milwaukee. Okay. The illusion that, and this is not necessarily true in other countries. And I think the Cuban government has done a very good job of convincing people that you don't want Cubano on Cubano crime, that you are not your own enemy. And the Cubano government's got a lot of issues and a lot of problems that you know I disagree with them on. But by and large, Cuba is a place where there is a sense of humanity that is just not expressed in the same way. I'm not blaming anybody, you know, North European cultures, Southern European cultures, is that there's all these differences. But till you've really, really spent time in any other culture, which I hadn't before this, you don't feel it. There's a rhythm, there's a sense of things. And I didn't even know what that was for 3 or 4 years. And I still just am learning it. Certainly no expert, but it's to me the blessing, and I'm not religious, but the blessing of having that opportunity, it far outweighs anything that I've ever done or will do with my photographs. Because I think it's enriched my life in a way that I had not a single clue before I went down there, you know. And somebody said, or if not, they should have, photography is a search for yourself. Who are you? Why are you drawn to this? What's motivating you? You know, and I'm still look at stuff and I still go, what am I doing there? Why? There's a reason. And it's my gut. It's something in me driving me there. It's not, you know, yeah, oh, there's a great shot. That's a good location. But when you get beyond that, um, as much as I love New York, I have no desire to shoot in New York City. There are
Mm.
so many great photographers here who are so much better than I am. And I'm not young. I'm not going to run around and find all the great shadows at night and this and that and a new way to shoot things and shoot the parades and shoot the this. That somebody else can do that. That's fine. Not my thing. You know. So I think it's
And
become, you know, a life journey in ways that I had no clue when I set out doing it that it would, you know, it would be that way. And
Mm.
when the day is done, when I put up the little yays and nos, this is a big yay.
Oh, so where do you go from here?
Where do I go from here? It's interesting because I do want to keep shooting in Cuba. I do want to shoot more. It's harder and harder with no gas, with blackouts. Just the ability, I can't go out into the provinces now as easily and shoot Carboneros, or I can't, the rodeo shut down. So you get more and more limited, and I can go shoot the street for a while, but I like to find these outlier groups, these people that are connected about something that somehow motivate me, whether it's, people into Santeria ceremonies, or whether it's these women at Santa Venia, which is a Catholic church for the elderly. And, we've managed to let them get us shoot in there and shoot. And these boxing clubs, the rodeos, the Carboneros. I was shooting these kids, these rappers for a while. I just keep looking for different outliers, different groups, because I find I work best when I'm in a situation where people ignore me by and large.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good setting to shoot. There's a natural activity. You don't have to get people doing stuff. They've got stuff to do. But it's not so fast that if you don't get it that second, you lost it. The Cuban street moves. And you've got, the street in New York, the Western Street is linear. People go places back and forth. And you're shooting movement. You're shooting a line. You're shooting a shadow. You're shooting an expression. You're in somebody's face. In Cuba, the street's circular. It's hot. People come outside in the middle of the day. They live there. They sit there. They play dominoes. They cook. They hang out. They braid each other's hair. Somebody's walking by. This guy's drunk. That guy's unloading rice. That guy's doing this. I've got 3 layers going on, depth of field. I've got 5 characters. How the hell do I, without even a background in composition, find all this stuff? It's a challenge. There are some Cubanos who do that really well. And there are some photographers, mostly what I've seen, mostly Latin, Brazil, Peru, who get it, who get that sense of, in your foreframe, you've got a dog's paw, and back here is a guy cutting wood, and over there is a bird. So you got your triangle, you got your depth of field, but you've got subjects that are weird, or there's a cross hanging here, or something like that. And I would love to be like that. Tiago Santana, Brazilian photographer, great stuff. Nobody knows about him. I was introduced to him by Instagram. So I'm trying to do more of that in the street. I'm trying to get away from the classic, you in the background or this. But that's the rhythm of the Cuban street that is not innate to me. I didn't grow up in that, And so when I look at photographs of Cuba, 95% of the time I can tell you if they're taken by a foreigner or a Cubano because of the perspective. Because we all go somewhere with our own perspective of what it is. You cannot not do that. And it's not just getting away from the cigars and the cars and things. It's also how you see it. And it's taken me a long time to understand how Cubanos see what they see, why they think things have importance that we don't, and to offer through Cuban photography, through other photographers, to offer me a different idea, a different aspiration than I naturally would have had, that drives me to say, I shoot with a couple with Manuel Almenarez, who you interviewed, and Lisi Alvarez and stuff. And we'll be like, let's go do a Tiago shot today. Tiago puts a guy right here and he's totally out of focus. And there's 2 people back in the side, way back there, and they're in focus. And it's great, but it's weird. It's different. So, we'll play around. We'll try to do different stuff, but I'm trying to expand my projects and I'm trying to expand how I see things, how my eye perceives something. And if possible, develop a little bit more intuitiveness because I am very analytical and I look at books over and over and over and I see things and I go, okay, I like that. I can do that. Let me try that shot. And then I'll go look for it. But I don't go somewhere and go, I got it. The Lord does not sweep me over in those moments. And that's just who I am. So, you work with what you have. And I think for me, it's trying to get to be the best, photographer I can be and focusing on in a place that works, a way of shooting. I'm not a spring chicken. How much longer am I going to Cuba? I don't know. So, and every trip could be the last. So, I'm just trying to shoot as much as I can and to get to the point where I feel like I've achieved what I could. Because, you guys probably feel this too. It's like when you do something good, you go, yeah. You feel good. You're like, I did that. And it's a nice feeling. And it's not the same thing as I made $20 today. I mean, $20 is nice. They're different things. So, I'm after the yes. I'm after those moments of achieving something that I honestly think has merit.
Do you feel kind of creatively fulfilled at this point, John? Because I know you said you started all this because you felt like, oh, look at my life. I haven't really done anything creative. Are you starting to feel kind of fulfilled?
I'm in what
in
I
that
call
way?
the gravy period, which is I've already had people say that's a nice photograph. I believe Bob when he says, I like your work. I believe him. I don't think he's being nice to me because I'm on your podcast. That means a lot to me to have people like you or people at Fabrica or people who I wouldn't have dreamed of 10 years ago say, you've actually done something good is so euphoric for me. So everything is gravy now. Everything after this is like, just thank you. And have I reached that point? I'm going to die with 22 things to do. That's how you keep living is you get driven by being inspired to do something. And, today I got 12 things done before I talk to you, but tomorrow I got 14 other things to do. That's my life. I can deal with it. Better than sitting around waiting for the Brady Bunch to come on. Maybe not.
I like that.
Bob. You may disagree.
No,
They're a good show.
I don't know about that, but I like the line.
But no, it's I'm not sure I would approach this if I'd started doing this at 35 or 40. I was probably more traditional, more looking at measures of success. And, I think some of it's happened because as you get older, you say, what's important? To me, the moment in my life, the changeover moment was my ex-wife and I always talked about skydiving. And I would say, yeah, we'll do that in the future sometime because I didn't want to skydive. I was scared.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who would be?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I thought you were being serious. So one day in my early mid 50s, probably mid 50s, I thought, you know what? I am never skydiving. It's not going to happen. That's the difference. The difference is when you can say, yeah, I'll do that in the future. And then all of a sudden you're like, I won't be doing that. And that sobers you up. And that makes you go, okay, what do you want to do? You want to keep up this bullshit running around you've been doing for a long time? Okay. And for some people, the social interaction, the this, that, it's fulfilling. It's great. That's fine. For me, it was like, what do I want to achieve with my life? What do I want to do? And, so that whole, I think part of that quest has been just trying to listen to myself and say, this makes you happy. This you're compelled to do. This you're driven to. I don't quite know why yet, but listen to that and figure it out. Wake up in the middle of the night with 27 thoughts, whatever. But, and then at a certain point you realize it's the process. The end result is great, but the process is what gives you that sense of happiness that you're doing this. And, and so that makes me, when I have them, in Cuba, we always have a saying, you have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And we had a day once out in Remedios in the middle of the country, small city. We get in there. We hear this band playing. We hear this music playing across the town square. They're playing Cheap Trick. Mommy's all right. Daddy's all right. And I'm like, holy shit, this is not Cuba. Nobody plays rock and roll here. Nobody's playing this. And they sound so good. So we go over to the Cultura de Arte, and there's a band of long hairs playing, and they've got the recording, and they're playing the recording, and then they're trying to play it themselves. And I'm like, this is cool. Guys, can we come over and photograph you tomorrow? They're like, sure, come on. Okay. Our next day is 6 a.m. We picked up a crazy local guy who knew everybody. We found him playing dominoes, and he got us into a state run business where they basically they kill pigs. Okay. They slaughter pigs, a slaughterhouse. 6 o'clock, 2 pigs. They're going to be done by 8. I didn't know how I would react to seeing a pig being killed. I had no idea whether it would bother the heck out of me. What? I don't know, but it's an opportunity. It's not come up again. It did not violate my moral code.
Yeah. Do you still eat pork?
Yeah.
After that?
In Cuba, you cannot not eat pork.
Yeah.
8 o'clock, sugarcane field. We bribed this guy to let us go in and shoot the sugarcane field because there's so few places left where they actually, cane, they actually cut it by hand. It's all combine now, and that's like no fun to photograph. 8 o'clock there, these guys at 1. 6 o'clock, we get in there, boom, the guys are there, they let us in. I realized these guys kill a pig in 20 seconds in the most humane way possible. Right there, boom, one squeal, they're gone. You go out in the country, these pigs kick around for 5-10 minutes because they don't know how to do it right. 8 o'clock, go in there, shoot the sugarcane guys. Bunch of great guys come out. My legs are covered in sugar tar, this and that. Going for lunch, phone call. The band broke up that night. Who'd have thought?
Get the band back together, man.
I said,
the prominent American photographer was coming, and they all got fame hungry.
Well, I said to the people with me, I said, don't worry. They got nowhere to go. They'll get back together. We'll shoot them next.
Exactly.
And
maybe they can choose some better music to cover.
So, that's the way things, I mean, it's just, you have to be in Cuba. You just, things don't, the historian said, stones float and logs sink. It's Cuba. It doesn't make sense. And that's the way so many things are. And you have to adapt to that. And as a Westerner, it's really annoying. And when you're on a schedule, and time is what you have, and it's a constant, like, it can't be like, yeah, we'll go back next week, whatever. Yeah. It's like, I don't have next week. I'm gone.
Yeah.
So I think
it's good for us, though. Like, I lived in South America for a while, and I think it's good for us to, like, stop thinking time is money, first of all. Stop that. Chill out. And if something doesn't go to plan, then chill out about it. It's okay. Let it go. Well, I think we need it a little bit.
So where I've come to, it used to bother me a lot, and where I've come to now is I expect it. So it doesn't really get to me when it happens.
Mm.
But I'm also only there for a certain amount of time, and I'm there for a reason. So I am going to try to push ahead and get as much done as I can. And I'll say to like Manuel or Lisi, I'll say, it's Yuma time. No more 4 o'clock. Oh, I'm tired. I'm like, forget that. Do that crap when I'm not here. You're on Yuma time. Okay. And that's the way it goes.
Bring a little New York energy to them.
Exactly. And then when it doesn't work out, I don't get stressed. I expect it. And I think for me, at least, it's a compromise between trying to do things, but realizing they're not all going to get done and the world's not going to end if, and we still sit around at night and have fun and, have a nice meal and whatever. And so, but there is a value. You live in South America, so you know what it's like just adapting to another culture. And I had never had that experience before to a degree that I have now, and, I come back here and I'm a lot more, New York does not bother me. There are all these people, half of them, I think they're all screwed up. God bless you. You're my city. Fine. Do what you want. Yeah.
How long does that last? A couple of days?
No, I got to tell you, it really is interesting when I've been able to say inside of me, like, I really think you're screwed up, but I don't care. You're not bothering me with what you do. Even if it's in my face, fine. If you ever hang out in New York, you just pick a person, you go talk to him. I will go talk to them. I'll talk to anybody. And I'm always curious about people. And so part of it is that, I'm just so old and living in the 80s that I don't really care anymore. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's an adaptive approach to things.
Yeah. Curiosity is a gift, and it goes a long way when you're dealing with other people.
And that was something I was born with. Intuition, I wasn't, but curiosity, I was. And that's the biggest character trait that I think has helped me. Genuine curiosity, and it's what helps me most with people because I think they sense that that's where I'm coming from.
Well, thanks, John. We gotta wrap up here. So before we go, tell everybody where can they find you?
I have a website.
Yeah.
It's Carboneros de Cuba, CARBONESDECUBA.com. And I also have an Instagram site, J Rosenmiller, I think. I'm not great on loading new stuff up. I'm working on it. I will probably start to show other photos that I've done. And those are the two places. I don't care if somebody emails me. Should I say my email or
go ahead?
Sure.
If you're interested in any of my work in any capacity, it's J Rosenmiller, ROSENMILLER at Hotmail. I am honored if anybody thinks my work is nice enough, they would actually like a copy. So my pricing will be very reasonable because I'm not looking to make money off of this. So if you can't afford it, I'll give it to you for free. But the truth is for me, if somebody says, of all the stuff I could hang or have, I think your stuff's nice enough that I'd like it. That really means a lot to me. And I would feel honored if anybody felt that.
That's great.
We'll add links to all that. And thank you so much for sharing more about, how this project came to life.
Well, thank you.